Are we rolling? I think we
Rolling.
are. Hello and welcome to Pub Goth Transmission. I paused there. I forgot the name of the podcast mid word. I was blanking there. Just about got through it until I scuppered myself. Anyway, today on this episode of Pub Goth Transmission, we're going to be talking about Palestine, something you've probably not heard about or even heard of. It's an obscure topic that no one's really talked about or knows about. So we're going to shine a light on this little known issue. And yeah, basically want to cover sort of three main aspects. Want to cover the dynamics of the conflict. If you've been paying close attention, I'll take your brain to another dimension, then you'll be aware of what these dynamics are. But I think a lot of people, even people on the pro-Palestine movement, only really know half the story, in my opinion. I want to make sure people have a full understanding. The second thing is I've got my tin foil. I'm going to make myself a tinfoil hat because this guy here's got a conspiracy theory he wants to lay down on you, which is about Palestine. And then the third thing I want to talk about is the Hannibal Directive and how Israeli society has gone from seemingly being somewhat interested in preserving their own lives and the lives of their country people to being at best numb, at worst gleeful about sacrificing their own countrymen and selves in order to destroy more Palestinian life. So it's going to be a cheerful, light-hearted episode, really. You know, lots of laughs, lots of light-hearted, funny little anecdotes. Adam, how are you doing?
Yeah, it's all right. I don't know. I've got a bit, folks. I'm kind of pretty doomed right now. Kind of feels like the rise of Anglo-fascism is kind of baked in. But we got a new party. It's been kind of fun trying to work out what that should be called.
Oh, do you know my exhibition?
What
Did you submit one?
I have
What
not
was
submitted a
yours?
name yet. I think it has to have socialist in the title, not people's. Like, people's party sounds stupid. Maybe just something that's quite honest. But we're doing like socialist Republican or not the Socialist Workers' Party, for God's sake.
Oh, you're no fun. I put Party McParty face.
Oh, because I still think Jezbolah's quite good, but I don't really want to centre Corbyn too much in the
Cracking.
movement because I think his particular
He's a bit
faction.
old.
Well, he's one getting quite old, and I think his particular faction is a bit more trade union bureaucratic and not as democratic as I think a properly mass party should be, even if we need to have one. I've been sort of adjacent to some of the party discussions and still sign up. The mass democracy will have to be there, but we have to be kind of forced on a lot of the factions currently vying control. Luckily, if we all join up, even if we would outnumber all of the old fucking geriatric trots about 4-1 anyway. So if we all join up, it'll be harder for them to control everything.
Well, there can't be that many. I feel like there really aren't that many geriatric trots. They're just quite loud and
Oh,
persistent. They haven't got anything
you would
to
be
do.
fucking surprised, comrade. You would be
Really?
surprised. Like, we are so
Where do
stuck in
they
the
come
tradition of
from?
just elder trots, as I like to call them, the Ken Loach cosplay collective with 3Ks, who mostly just stand around trying to sell newspapers and control everything whilst having no ideas. But losing in a very
Yeah,
virtuous manner.
I find it very funny when an SWP person sort of grabs the mic and starts saying stuff, and it's just always just the least like. I remember being at an immigration deportation blocky McBlockerson, whatever they're called, sit in front of the van for a bit, and of course the SW people aren't sitting in front of the van; they're just standing outside with their megaphone and they'd be like, How is it that you're arresting these people here when you've got politicians sniffing coke in Westminster? And it's just like, mate, what the fuck are you talking about? No one cares. Like, yeah, they seem like a controlled opposition, but controlled by themselves.
They're controlled by themselves. They always lie. They always lie about if you try to organise with them. They will negotiate with the police behind people's backs, and they, through their fronts, like Stamp to Racism, they will hire private security who, from first-hand experience, fight on side of police. So the Socialist Workers' Party, on top of the fact that they already protect rapists in their party, can get fucked.
Ask them about Comrade Delta. And also, whenever they do bring a lot of placards. So if you haven't got a placard and you agree with the message, just make sure you peel the top 2 inches that says Socialist Workers' Party off the top, and do it in front of them. Do it slowly in front of them. Slowly peel the top section of that thing off, and then toss it on the floor, look them in the eye and go, "Cheers, mate," and then walk off with your clean placard. If you're in a UK protest.
Absolutely.
So today, before we get into the serious shit, I'm enjoying this delicious lemon ale. Not completely settled on that name. It's a light one. I'm thinking of calling it School Night because it's a one designed for school nights. It's only 3%. Very light, lemony flavour, lemon drop hop. Yeah, so that's what I'm drinking tonight. Maybe that'll become a regular segment. Not a bad idea for pub goths. How about another one? How about another segment just before we get into... I'm listening to other podcasts, like Bad Hasbro or whatever, where they sort of have a little bit of a jovial back and forth before diving into the shit. What are you drinking anything, Adam, right now? You got yourself a drink?
Yes, I am drinking Henry Weston's vintage cider, which is another way of saying K-cider, but slightly posh because there's some sort of old git on the front. It is the official drink of depression. So, I'm glad to be sponsoring the community, raising awareness of Henry Weston's, and, long may our partnership continue.
Bit higher on the ABV front as well. But yeah, no, cider. Gotta love a bit of cider. Henry Weston's. And what are you listening to right now? Anything in particular?
So I'm listening to the new Burial EP. Because my god, that guy knows how to do sad soundscapes. It's just a new 2-tracker from Burial. That's pretty good. And then what else? I'm also going through a bit of a Chumbawamba phase. Right? I'm listening to some old Antifa songs. People think Chumbawamba's just, I get knocked down and I get up again. That's the heaviest thing they've done. Listen to songs like The Day the Nazi Died or, Mouthful of Shit.
That's the only one that I know, but I know there's more to them than that. I just haven't really dug into that rabbit hole yet, but I'm aware that it is a rabbit hole.
Get your Chumbas wumbered, folks. They're basically a pub goth band.
Yeah, I mean, I've been going through a real sort of tear on funk and soul recently. Been absolutely obsessed with a track called "Lovers Come Around" by Donald Byrd. It's got a mad bass on. It goes doodle doo, doodle doo, doodle doo, doodle doo. Doon, doon, diddly doo. And I lose my shit every time I hear it. What You See Is What You Get by the Dramatics. Great tune. Bobby Womack, Across 110th Street. Just a lot of that sort of stuff. Really been enjoying it. Been playing that. Also discovered a band called The Teardrop Explodes, kind of slightly psychedelic indie from the 80s. They've got a song called Colours Fly Away that I'm particularly taken with. So yeah, that's some light-hearted stuff. So, Genocide. So, you obviously know what I'm talking about, right? You've been following this. The reason I want to talk about what I'm calling the dynamics of the conflict. What are I know some people don't like the term conflict, but bear with me here. I need a generic phrase. What are the dynamics of this conflict? Because a lot of people don't really know, even if they support the Palestine movement. People know there's genocide going on, even if they're on the side that doesn't want to call it that. They're like, no, it's not genocide. They're just trying to sort of destroy the people in whole or in part. But it's not genocide. It just meets the definition. You know what I mean? Or they're just saying, oh no, they're just Hamas. Hamas is Hamas, and Hamas, October 7th, Hamas. If they're still in the sort of Zio cult. But there's a lot more to it, because on the battlefield, I'm gonna lay this out. It is not clear whether there has been a single moment since October 7th when the IDF, ground forces, really all air forces, have actually been targeting Hamas, specifically the Palestinian resistance fighters. Like, it is unclear whether they're ever really trying to find and kill fighters. I think they were trying to early on, but they haven't really been successful. And that sounds crazy, right? But it's not when you think about it, because we know they've got a tunnel network. So basically, people think, oh, well, how did Hamas avoid being... How have they lasted this long? How are they still launching ambushes this long in and not being defeated? They've been preparing for this shit for 20 years longer, right? They've been building up this whole system of resistance. They've been preparing for this for decades and decades, you know? Since, like, Adnan al-Ghul and onwards, they've been preparing this shit. So, Israel is simply targeting civilians and destroying homes. We know this, right? But I want you to think about this more in a military context. Operation Gideon's Chariots, the latest phase 2 of the Gaza that just concluded, but they're going to do part 2 now, but it just concluded the first part of it. What did they actually do? They basically moved into a few areas. They declared 80% of it a no-go zone, a kill zone for civilians. They moved into a few areas on the outskirts of Khan Yunis and Beit Hanun, destroyed as many buildings as they could, and then left. That was it. That was Operation Gideon's Chariots. That was the phase 2 of the war. You know, they did an operation up north. Can't remember officially what it was called, but it was the general's plan. What do? They encircle Beit Hanun and Jabalia. They try to starve out the population. They bomb the shit out of the hospital. They arrest the head of the hospital, Dr. Abu Sufir, who's still detained. The population refused to leave. The resistance ambushed the fucking shit out of them, and they end up signing a ceasefire. That had nothing to do with Trump or Biden, by the way. Don't let anyone tell you that. It was purely because of the unbreakable steadfastness of the Palestinian people who protested death before dishonor. We're not going to leave, because they wanted them to leave through the Netzarim checkpoint, and then they'd never be allowed back to northern Gaza. They're not falling for that again. As the great George Bush once said, fool me once, shame on you, but a fool won't get fooled again. So they're not going to leave because they know what happens when you leave. You're never allowed back, right? That's what their grandparents fell for. They're not going to fall for it, right? So they refuse to leave, and the resistance just keeps ambushing the fucking shit out of it. And if you watch the resistance footage, I remember being on tour with Daigora, stepping out into the smoking area after a set, sitting down, smoking a ciggy, seeing there's a fresh video, watching it, and quite funny in a gig venue to be smoking and watching it. But I just remember the final clip I'll never forget, where you see a Merkava 4 driving forward, and like a stadium-sized explosion just throws it in the air. That was like the conclude. They made fucking mincemeat the idea of it. And they do every single time. They have just this time the Stones of David operations against Gideon's Chariots. They recently raided a base in Khan Yunis, killed a bunch of IDF soldiers and nearly took a bunch of them captive. Like, combatant on combatant fighting, actual warfare, military shit. The IDF are not a real army. I want to read a bit from this article that I'd really recommend. We'll put a link to it. This is Robert Inlakesh writing in Al Mayadeen English. I can't share my screen on that, and so I probably can. Can I? Share, I can. There we go. Technology. Oh, yeah. So, there you go. Look, the Zionist entity has done everything except actually target and try and fight the Palestinian resistance on the ground, hiding in fortified areas and inside their military vehicles, occasionally getting picked off by ambushes. This is also why they have no battle footage. This is an important point, despite having fought for 22 months, because they only engage in armed clashes on the ground when they're being attacked by Palestinian armed groups. There is no real army. It's a glorified police force that was built to bully teenagers with a sophisticated intelligence apparatus and air force behind it. So I couldn't sum it up better myself, really. That is basically what you need to know. And like, if that's not true, then why haven't they won yet? If you're in doubt of that. And I want to go back to what he says. You see the Al-Qassam brigades release, well, I don't know if you do see, this is what I'm saying, you should check out John Elmer's Resistance Report, you should follow Resistance News Network on Telegram, you should follow The Cradle, you should follow Almighty in English, all these channels, so you make sure you're getting everything, and watch these clips, right? Because beyond anything else, they're just fucking incredible to watch. So I follow the IDF and I watch their footage. What do you see? You see a grainy image from a drone, and you see an outline of a human being getting hit by an explosive, and they say, "We assassinated a terrorist." That's it. That's all you see, right? And then, sometimes then, on, say, Eye on Palestine, you see a video of a bunch of dead civilians, because it was just a bunch of civilians killed by the airstrike. And then you go and watch footage released by Al-Qassam, and you see some guy with an explosive device on a handle in his hand run up to a troop carrier and just throw it straight in the fucking hatch and then leg it off, right? Like, one is like shit that Hollywood couldn't even imagine or pull off. The most, like, spectacular in the sense of you're watching an unbelievable spectacle. Whatever side of this conflict you sit on, it's an unbelievable spectacle. The other side is just grainy footage of drone strikes. And another point I want to raise, when you see footage of dead people in Gaza, how many of them have weapons on them? How many weaponed people? Because a lot of the time the fighters don't wear uniforms, right? Only like special forces and shit wear them. Because they probably, why would you? But like the civilians that you see dead, well, I'm calling them civilians. Why? Because you never see any weapons on them. And half of them are fucking women and children anyway. Although in some cases there are female fighters. But then flip it around, right? You watch the resistance footage, you don't see a fucking civilian anywhere. What do you see? Miles of devastated terrain. That's what the Israelis call it. They call this devastated terrain warfare. Miles of devastated terrain with either a group of Israeli soldiers standing around being genocidal morons, or a bulldozer and excavator knocking down as many houses as they can, or, a troop carrier with its hatch open, sitting there gormlessly waiting for someone to drop a bomb in it. And that's what they do. And they carry out sometimes extremely complex ambushes where they will lay an explosive device that will explode and cause a load of casualties. This happened very recently. Then the rescue force comes, and they know exactly where they're going to come, and then they blow them up. And they lay these multi-layered complex ambushes because they still have command and control. They do it all from tunnels. They can detonate explosives from tunnels using car reverse alarms. And again, they've been building this for 20 years. Where do they get their weapons from? Are they smuggling it in from Rafah? No, that would be stupid. They don't need to do that. They have all the explosive they could ever possibly imagine having, because 5% of Israeli bombs don't explode, and they've dropped 6 Hiroshima's worth of bombs on Gaza. That's a lot. You don't need to do the fucking arithmetic to figure out that's a lot of explosives to play with. Sometimes they just wire up a detonator to it and bury it in the fucking ground, wait for the tank to come, kaboom, thank you very much. Or they harvest all the explosive out of it, use it in RPGs, use it in these improvised explosive devices. And sometimes the Israelis have got a bunch of obsolete troop carriers, M113s, aluminium frame, and they're not using them because they're obsolete. So what they do is they put remote controls in them, fill them with Semtex, and then just drive them into hospitals and blow them up. They use them as giant car bombs. And sometimes using spoofing, the resistance being able to take over these things and stop them. And I saw a footage, I shit you know, I think it's a Soraya Al-Quds guy, so PIJ, literally just climb on top of this giant thing full of Semtex and just start pulling out the wires, and you're just like, fucking, that'll give you a fucking anxiety attack. But yeah, and they're not only increasing their military capabilities, they're removing dud bombs from communities as well, which happens all the time in London. You always hear of some bomb from the Blitz found in a canal or something. So yeah, I mean, they've got endless explosives. They're able to, we don't quite know how, not entirely been revealed, but from what we've seen, it is clear that they have decentralized underground manufacturing capability of their explosive devices. So the RPGs, what they call the Yasin 105, which is designed with 2 charges to puncture the Macabre armor, they're making that shit underground somewhere, and probably in lots of places, right? Because if it was a big centralized site, probably would have been found or destroyed by now. So the fact they're still making, because the explosives they're throwing in the hatches of Namas, which is the Israeli troop carrier, are new. We've not seen them the whole war. It's a scaled down version of the Schwath with a handle on it. They're making that shit now. right? This isn't a stockpile. They're still making it. 700 days of genocide, and they're still able to manufacture weapons. And you might wonder why the fucking hatch is always open. I was wondering the same question. It's because the Nama can get up to 50 degrees centigrade inside if the air conditioning unit isn't working properly. So it's like cook alive or open the hatch and risk burning alive. So it's a big problem for them. So the question is that comes off this. There's two questions, and this is what I call the dynamics of the conflict. There's two clocks. One clock is how many more civilians can Israel murder before there's nothing worth resisting for? There's nothing worth fighting for anymore. Or mass displacement they want to do, but I don't think it's feasible. They keep workshopping countries. Libya, Somaliland, South Sudan. How are you going to get them there? You're going to load like 2 million people onto trucks, onto helicopters. They're not going to want to go. You're going to have to shoot a bunch of them to get them to go on there. That's not going to look good. That's not going to look that much better than the whole starvation thing. Because they're thinking about this. They think about the problem with mass starving people to death is the bad PR. That's the Israeli mindset. Like, oh, Hamas are waging a propaganda campaign against us by filming people starving to death and then media seeing it. You know what I mean? So that, you know, how would you do that? How would you move them, to a giant refugee camp in South Sudan and hope they don't just find a way back to Jordan and start a new fucking group, resistance group? It doesn't really make any sense. And any country that you dump 2 million extremely angry, traumatized Palestinians in is going to cause an enormous amount of unrest in said country. So that just doesn't seem like a feasible idea. I think the Israelis have realized that they can't get away with starving 2 million people to death. So that's why they're desperate for that plan. Because you'd think, we've been saying there's no red lines, but the starvation thing has become a red line. It's become a red line because even though Starmer does his whole, if you don't stop gassing Jews in Auschwitz, I'm going to recognize Auschwitz as a state routine with Palestine. If you don't stop killing starving Palestinians to death, we'll recognize it as a state. Like, oh yeah. But they're starting with the symbolic, meaningless threats. And that's enough to enrage the Israelis anyway. But the other thing is that all the aid is purchased from Israeli companies. So it's like the military-industrial complex. The military-industrial complex doesn't like the starvation plan either because it doesn't involve any bullets. It doesn't involve enough bombs. It doesn't involve... They don't get their cut. All the companies that are selling pallets and pallets and pallets of food for this aid that is then not allowed into Gaza or is stolen by ISIS-affiliated Israeli-coordinated gangs and stockpiled in Rafah, led by the illiterate Abu Shabab, who, despite being illiterate, wrote a whole piece in the Washington Post recently about popular resistance to Hamas in Gaza. Ghostwriter.
ChatGPT, come on. They won't pay for that. Like,
yeah, no, true. I mean, So the whole aid, basically, the companies that sell the aid are making a lot of money out of that, and they don't want the starvation plan because they can't sell any more pallets of food. And so there's a bunch of reasons why, and it would take forever as well. It takes a long time to starve 2 million people to death, and all the most vulnerable people die first. So the people you really want to kill first, the fighters, they're probably going to be the last people to die. And seeing the steadfastness of the Palestinian people and the fighters, you could siege that fucking enclave for a full year with nothing in or out. You'd move in and you'd immediately get ambushed. I would never trust it. These people are superhuman. These fighters are superhuman. So again, that doesn't seem like a feasible plan anymore. But like I've just laid out how the IDF ground forces are basically a joke and completely useless against militarily trying to defeat the resistance. So what options are they left with? Keeping bombing, destroying homes to make it unlivable, starve it as much as they can get away with, and hope that this genocide clock, ticks down to the point where resistance becomes futile. There's nothing worth fighting for. But there's another clock. Because they can't do that. They keep having to move in the army. I don't know why they keep doing this. If I was in charge of Israel and I was genocidal, I'd just try and keep the army as out of this as I possibly could. They did that with Lebanon, right? They put ground forces in Lebanon. They put a finger in here, it got bitten off by Hezbollah. Put a finger in here, it got bitten off by Hezbollah. Finger in here. And then they just bombed the shit out of a load of stuff and just kind of called it a day because they got hammered. But in this case, they never put a big maneuver into Lebanon, is what I'm saying. They never took any major territory. But in Gaza, they keep trying. They keep trying to do more floundering military operations that don't achieve anything, and their soldiers keep getting killed and wounded. You know, like 26,000 Israeli soldiers are suffering psychological distress. And actually, I'm going to pull up another article from the Cradle. Sorry, I should have had this loaded before. I knew there was another article.
No,
that I
we
was
don't do a Joe Rogan and have someone constantly bringing the articles up. We bring our own fucking articles up. We don't.
Yeah, we bring our own article. We flounder around, and do you know what? I know how to find it quite quickly. It's a recent one, so it shouldn't
It's all right.
take me long. It's worth it. It's worth it because it ties into exactly what I'm trying to say here.
Well, I said
I'm
this
just
stuff
going
is super easy to edit, so
All right, yeah, edit this bit out so I look snappy. Why can't it was? God, there's too much stuff they post, or not enough. One of the two. Have I scrolled past it? Oh look. European powers. Israel launched major airstrikes on Yemen. God, there just is this much news. There's too much shit going on. There we go. Found it. There we go. Right. Let me shizzle my skrizzle. There it is. So yeah, this article in the Cradle that came out today, right, sums up. This is the other clock I'm talking about. We've got this genocide clock. We don't know where the breaking point is, right? And it's all horrifying, and too much unspeakable horror has already happened anyway. But I'm speaking coldly and analytically about what I consider the dynamics of the conflict, right? So in terms of the other clock, when is the Israeli army just going to break? When are they going to no longer be able to carry out operations because too many people, they're too short of manpower to carry anything out? So here we go. The exhaustion and disillusionment facing the Israeli army is threatened to complicate Tel Aviv's plans. I mean, this is, to put this clearer, the head of the army, Zamir, I always forget how to pronounce his name. He openly said, like, they need to pull out of Gaza because the army's going to break. He said that like a month ago. And now he's been openly critical, saying, look, we can't do this occupation of Gaza City plan. And I just want you to understand that occupation of Gaza City means moving the civilian population out of Gaza City in order to demolish it, to make it unlivable, to move that genocide clock down. Right, that's what that means. So so basically around 40 to 50% of soldiers, reservists, aren't turning up. Right, half aren't turning up. Right, there's people that have dropped out because they don't think the war's just anymore. People are facing penalties. You know, it's really, this has been kind of happening for a while. But it's just getting worse and worse. Again, the clock is ticking down. We don't know where the breaking point is. But, you know, we've known, for example, they're trying to recruit soldiers from the ultra-Orthodox who are extremely genocidal, but also they're kind of the pampered babies of Israel because of this kind of sweetheart deal when there wasn't many of them. And they've been storming military bases. But, yeah, like, they need to, they're now reaching out to Jewish diaspora, right? They're contacting in this country, they're probably contacting Jewish Zionists in this country and saying, hey, do you want to come fight, do you want to come do some genocide in Gaza? Because they're having such a substantial manpower crisis. This one soldier tells NYT his 100-man company is decreased to 60 troops. So they're really facing a crisis, and it's not just a manpower crisis, they're also facing a crisis of equipment, which is fucking crazy considering the amount that they are supplied. Like, it is nuts. But it shows you how many vehicles the resistance has destroyed. They're having to deploy Merkava 3s and not Merkava 4s, the latest one, in this assault on Gaza City. They're short on manpower, and even, going back to months and months ago, there was problems with soldiers being ordered to search buildings and just refusing because a lot of the buildings were booby-trapped and ready to blow. So that is what I mean when I say the dynamics of the conflict, and they haven't changed. Like, you would have thought a ceasefire would have been forced by America, but no, it still goes on, and it literally just hasn't changed since 2023. The Israelis basically don't even bother trying to fight the resistance because they know they'll lose. The resistance ambushes them, and their entire army is just a demolition and murder crew destroying homes and killing people. So most people know that last part, right? That's the part that makes it through the news and all the starvation and famine. But I think people don't quite understand just how completely impotent a military force the IDF are. And I just want to add one more point onto this because it's kind of like interesting. Have you ever noticed how whenever they launch an assault in Gaza or whatever and start taking casualties and make no progress, they switch to their favorite punching bag, Syria, and just start doing shit in Syria. They just start bombing shit in Syria. Sometimes random shit in Damascus. Sometimes targets in the countryside. They just sent 100 commandos to do operations in Syria. And I don't have the image to hand, but you know in Wikipedia where it says there's a war and it tells you the belligerents? When they first started attacking Syria after Assad was overthrown by Jelani, and they just bombed the shit out of Syria and demilitarized a lot of Syria's heavy weaponry, they had the war on Wikipedia. It said belligerents on one side, Israel, on the other side, nothing. They're just fighting with no resistance at all, just to let their frustrations out. Oh, we just got ambushed in Gaza. Let's carpet bomb this busy market in Gaza and then just go bomb some. Let's just go advance in Syria because we can, because no one shoots at us. That's the war they want. They can't stand a war where people shoot back at you. They like the type of war where you get to shoot people and no one gets to shoot back at you. And Syria is perfect for that. But Syria also I don't want to spiral out too much, but Syria also forms the perfect example of why you don't fucking, they surrendered. Basically, Jelani surrendered to Zionism. That was part of his deal of getting in after Assad. And they don't accept surrender. He's always been like, oh, like I said, when they attacked in the beginning, he said nothing. He did nothing. He didn't even raise a finger. And what does he get for that? What does he get for that total supine submission to Zionism? Humiliated every fucking week. Damascus just gets bombed just because.
Hey. He got to go on a podcast with Alistair Campbell. Is that not worth
it? What? Jelani?
Yeah, of course he fucking did. That's a fate worse than death for some people, but
yeah, that's true. He's sort of a British asset, Jelani. Jelani was specifically groomed, so I'm still calling him by his heel name, not his face name.
You dead naming the ISIS leader.
I'm dead naming him. Yeah, sometimes it's ethical to dead name, but I won't cover this topic because it's too big. But like in short, if you're like, yay, the horrible dictator Bashar al-Assad is gone, who's replacing him? Some guy called Ahmed al-Sharaa. Never heard of him. Fine. If you're familiar with pro wrestling and heel and face turns, when a good guy becomes a bad guy and a bad guy becomes a good guy, that's also how politics works. So basically, see Donald Trump as an example. But basically, Assad was toppled by HTS, this kind of rebranded Al-Qaeda in this place called Idlib in Syria, this little enclave. And for like a 5 or so years or longer, 6 or 7 years, the British ex-Labour people had been going to Idlib and grooming this guy Jelani, who is an Al-Qaeda Nusra Front leader and an ISIS deputy, proper full-on Sunni fist head chopper, about how he could change his image so that he could potentially become the new leader of Syria. So they're like, trim your beard down, put a suit on, change your name, and try and look like Zelensky. And it's literally what they do with pro wrestlers when they're going to become a good guy again. They need to write a good guy story. And so of course, as soon as he gets in, the Western powers lift all the sanctions. Doesn't do it. He's a puppet.
He's out.
Yeah,
he's Al Qaeda Starmer. You can't really do a good pun on that. Sorry.
No, it's a tough one. Yeah. It's one of those traps where it sounds like it would work, but it definitely doesn't.
It works better on print.
Yeah, true. So anyway, those are the dynamics of the conflict. So that being said, like, where do we go from here? How does this end? Well, like I said, I actually don't think I'm going to make a prediction now. I'm going to do a very stupid thing. Based on what I've said and what I'm seeing, I don't see, despite all of the horrors, which I don't want to minimize, how Israel complete this genocide. Short of going the colonial American smallpox blanket route and somehow engineering some sort of plague, some sort of deadly plague, which I wouldn't put it past them. I mean, polio's come back. They ground oxycodone into the flower aid they gave. They probably already tried it, to be honest. They're probably hoping dysentery or like the conditions would create it, which they kind of have. Even then, I don't know. I don't see how they can possibly kill all of the Palestinians because we've established they can't defeat the Palestinian resistance. The mass displacement thing doesn't seem like it's going to work, and it just doesn't seem like it's going to be feasible for them. They don't care about morality. That's why I'm not bringing this into this. Like, it doesn't seem feasible for them to be able to kill all of the Palestinian people in Gaza. That would take years and years, and if they keep having to do ground incursions, their army's going to break before they manage to do that. That's my prediction because I'm an idiot who makes them. But you might be wondering, why are the Western powers backing this so much? Like, why? If it's so futile and it's just a genocide and there's so much backlash for in the West, why are they backing this? And you might think, oh, it's because the Zionist lobbies, the APACs and the Labour Friends of Israel, they control the politicians, and that is true for things like, why is this random journalist getting like harassed and banned from Twitter, or like the more like smaller stuff, like the extent of it, like you say one word and you're banned and blocked from campus, and they have that kind of influence. But the reason spy planes are flying over Gaza, British spy planes from Cyprus, and sharing intel that allows Israel to carry out its genocide, doesn't really have an, they'd be doing that anyway even if there weren't Zionist lobbies, right? And they'd be selling them the F-35 parts even if there were no Zionist lobbies, and they would be tacitly behind this genocide materially. Let's say materially behind this genocide, because Erdogan's a classic example. Oh no, Israel's bad. They're very bad, and we hate Israel. Here's some oil. Have more of our oil. Terrible. We hate Israel so much. What are we going to do about these Syrians then? Should we put Jelani in then? We hate Israel. Like, you know, he's a classic example of the most, probably one of the biggest examples of doing a lot of this, but then actually materially supporting the Zionist regime a lot. Britain, you know, has been more, you know, also supporting, but all, you know, both materially and vocally supporting with the odd, oh, but maybe a two-state solution, which is, whenever someone says two-state solution, you can just basically think of the last good song you listened to and play that in your head while the next words come out of their mouth, because it's just going to be a bunch of complete empty twaddle that's totally meaningless. Or just keep asking them, but where are the borders going to be? But where would you draw the borders? Would you grant the right of return? But where are the borders going to be? Because they can never answer those questions. And if they do, they're not going to give a satisfying answer. How did I end up here? What was I talking about? Right, why are Western powers supporting this? So now I'm going to offer... The reason they're supporting it is because governments are a front for the capitalist class, which are not all unified in their interests, but they kind of coalesce behind certain things. One big one's obviously the military-industrial complex. Pretty lucrative to sell weapons. I've already talked about the aid, like in Israel. That's a huge interest. They're selling all of this food. But then you've also got like developers, right? They're not seeing dead, starving Palestinians and thinking, oh no. They're looking behind them and seeing perfectly demolished land and going, oh, put like a golf course on there, or like maybe a block of hotels with a swimming pool.
I mean, beachfront property, that's what Trump described it as.
Yeah, and he let this slip, didn't he? He said, we'll own Gaza. Not the Israelis building their settlements there. No, we'll own Gaza. And I want to point this out as well. What happened with Ukraine? Oh, we're going to give Ukraine all of these weapons to defend themselves, and now we'll take your fucking minerals, mate. And like, if you go and look at that fucking mineral deal, it's mafia politics. It's fucking mafioso politics. It is like, right, this is your fucking protection money. And you think they're not going to... It looks like they're not going to do the same thing with Israel, because Israel's the special little boy, and Israel's the, you know, there's so much Zionism and support for it, and it's more of a kind of thing. And I don't believe that. So if you will allow me, if you will indulge me, I am going to fashion myself a tinfoil hat, and I'm going to lay a little conspiracy theory on you all.
You know, Archie's going to talk about all these strategic limestone reserves that the Israelis are trying to extract from Lebanon.
Did you know I learned something recently that fuck, I've got it the wrong way around. Who's the president? Is President Aoun of Lebanon and it's Prime Minister Salam. Now Nawaf Salam. I didn't realize that Nawaf Salam's granddad, Salim Salam, I'm going to get this the wrong way around now. Negotiated with the British to make a part of Lebanon Palestine. No. Yeah, Palestine, so that he would be able to sell it to the Zionists for a settlement, specifically the Hula Hills, specifically to Netanyahu's granddad. Yeah, so that's why do you think he's in charge? Right, so I think my thought rays are now protected, or why I don't know what even the theory behind tinfoil hats are, to be honest. But anyway, I've got it on. Let's get our conspiracy theory on. So everyone's thinking, right, these Western governments, they're all jazzed up about Zionism. They love Israel, don't they? They love it. They think they're going a little bit too far, don't they? But they like their little friend. They're going to back it. They're great. But what if really they're not great allies of Israel? What if when America gives Israel more weapons, it's a bit like a heroin addict having a friend who keeps giving them more heroin? Like, oh, look, here's more heroin. You love heroin. But they're actually destroying themselves with the heroin. Well, what if it was a similar situation here? What if. Now, let me lay this out clear. I believe that after October 7th, Israel's allies and Israel itself believed that they could absolutely batter Hamas into submission with a huge terror bombing campaign and big incursion where they'd kill a bunch of civilians and destroy a bunch of shit, and Hamas would go, oh fuck, we better give up. And that didn't work. And so then they just kind of been genocidally scrambling around without much direction, and then they started trying to ethnically cleanse parts of Gaza, and they just demolished them and killed a bunch of civilians, but they've done nothing to the resistance. So I've already laid out, right? So now Western nations are in a bit of a bind because they're like, we're getting a lot of blowback here, you know? We're having to explain why we're backing these people who are starving a bunch of children to death. And like, we're looking more like idiots and dickheads. My legacy is becoming more shit-stained by the day. They don't care about morality. They're politicians. They're professional lives. But they care about their legacy because they're egotists, right? They don't want this much shit stain on their legacy. They want a good narrative to pull out of it. But at the same time, their backers, the capitalist class, they need Hamas gone because Hamas aren't just anti-Israel. They're anti Western hegemony. They're not going to let Western capital fully get involved and take over Gaza, right? And so they're a problem because they're aligned. They're in the axis of resistance. You know, they're aligned with Hezbollah and Ansarullah. They stand against Western hegemony. They stand against Western capitalism. So they need to be gotten rid of. And if the only way to get rid of them is Israel just sort of killing everyone, then we don't want to stop materially supporting Israel because then they'll collapse. Their war in Gaza would have collapsed in 3 months without American material support, right? They'll collapse if they stop being materially supported quite quickly. Sanctions, forget about it, right? So then it would leave Hamas intact, and then Hamas would become out stronger, and they might even take over the area, and that would be a nightmare for us, because then it would embolden the axis of resistance. So that's just not just a nightmare for Western governments and states, it's a nightmare for the capitalist class as well, because that's them kind of losing all of this potential real estate and ground. So they're like, okay, we don't want to withdraw material support for Israel, we'll just do more hand-wringing. We'll just start priming the pumps. Trump saying, MAGA's starting to turn on Israel. Keir Starmer saying, oh, if you don't stop killing Palestinians, we'll recognize them as a state, whatever the fuck that means. And all of this more, pointed words. We're Australia saying we're not going to let these people, these extremists come here. And then Australia, and then the Zionist. This I think is an example of the Zionist lobbies in Australia. Did you hear about this? They managed to force Australia to pin this anti-Semitic terrorism on the IRGC so that they could kick out Iran. I mean, that's the Zionist lobbies, 100%. That's not I don't think that's as much in the interest of the capitalist class. But basically, and I want to include the Gulf states, UAE and Saudi Arabia. They are going, oh, that gas field right off Gaza. Oh, that's getting their nips well and hard, right? So what is the trick here, right? This is the genius masterstroke solution. This is some Henry Kissinger shit. This is some dastardly deeds, right? We let Israel carry out the genocide, and then we fucking turn on them. And we say, you're doing a genocide. Your Zionist lobbies tricked us. They tricked us into thinking you were fighting Hamas, but you're really doing genocide. We had no idea until now. Now we're going to sanction you and withdraw our help because you were just doing a genocide. Because as soon as Israel have defeated Hamas, they have outstayed their usefulness. If they could have another pop at Hezbollah, that would be nice too. But they've kind of outstayed their usefulness once they've defeated Hamas, right? So you just turn on them. Okay, Hamas is out the way. So what do? Turn on Israel, call them a bunch of genociders, turn on the Zionist lobbies. There would inevitably be a massive wave of anti-Semitism, largely due to the extremely aggressive conflation of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism fabricated by Zionists themselves, which would be hideous. And what you would have is a stage-managed, basically free Palestine, but with the Americans running it, like they do with Lebanon and like they do on the West Bank, appointing probably someone like Mahmoud Abbas as being in charge of it, and totally colonizing Palestine with American, Saudi, Emirati, British, French capital, and creating another comprador regime like Jordan or whatever. And that way they get double bubble. They don't just get all the free real estate in Gaza, they kind of get all the free real estate in Israel as well. So for me, it seems like a bit of a masterstroke. Anyway, Adam, what do you make of my conspiracy theory?
Well, the hour of Minerva always comes at the dusk, so I'm not sure about. I don't like to make predictions because usually if I do, they end up being true and then worse than I expected. But
Start making good predictions then.
there's nothing good to predict, sadly.
It
But
reminds me of that
yeah,
UG thing, like Bono says, every time I clap, an African child dies. Well, stop fucking clapping then. I know it's an apocryphal story, but it is funny.
I mean, so I think in terms of the ideological pull, I think it's going to be really difficult for this sort of plan you're talking about to be pulled off, at least from the American perspective, because a lot of the reasons. I mean, Britain sends a lot of F-35 parts now, sort of bases from Elbit. We recently made a £2 billion deal with Elbit to train British soldiers.
Coming home, lads. It's coming home.
The police force. So idea for a colonial police force. The police force was established in the UK, the first police force by Robert Peel, as an embedded community army to do colonial occupation in Northern Ireland. So we export those tactics to the colonies and to Israel, which is a colony of essentially the Anglophone Empire. And then the violence of the periphery returns to the core. Everyone should read Aimé Césaire's Discourse on Colonialism to work out how that works. But I still think the influence of the evangelical lobby. So most Zionists on this planet are actually not Jewish. They are American Christian evangelicals who believe that essentially Jewish people have to run the quote unquote Holy Land so that Christ can come back and essentially murder most of them. It's a very anti-Semitic ideology. Not that Zionism ever had a problem with that. As Herzl said, the anti-Semites would be our greatest friends. Theodor Herzl, who wrote Der Judenstaat, the Jewish state, in the 1890s or so, I believe.
I would argue that Zionism and anti-European, I mean, because Zionism is a European ideology, and that's kind of where anti-Semitism an idea came from. I would argue that anti-Semitism and Zionism are two sides of the same coin.
Well, I would agree as well, actually, because I mean, if you look at how they were treating Mizrahi as Iraqi Jewish people, if you read the historian Avi Shlaim, he talks about he was an Israeli historian. His family moved there from, I believe, Iraq, and he looked at the archives, and they were just the Israeli state was openly admitting, yes, we did terrorist attacks to basically force these much browner Jewish people to come over to Israel to be our slightly somewhat underclass. And if you look at the treatment of Ethiopian Jews in Israel, the story ends up speaking for itself. But in terms of the wider idea of like Zionism as an ideology, I think it's so powerful in the American evangelical lobby that I still think it will be a determining force in American politics for quite some time. And in UK, if it's less religiously inflected, in the UK, I mean, frankly, fuck knows. I think mostly it's just to do with Atlanticism, so Britain being a fucking airstrip for the Americans. I do not think they will. I do not think the Americans will turn on, for example, the Israelis, because basically because the Americans are fascists, and I think at some extent their fascism requires a fraction of capital to kind of run away with the fascist project. This is the techno-fascist project of groups like Palantir and Anduril, and whilst they will eventually lose money, um, ultimately, you say that you say that there's nothing left for them to spend money on, something useful for them in a fully destroyed Gaza towards the coming sort of ends or climactic points of this genocide. But these people don't sell their projects based on use value. It's all on exchange value, and capitalists are not utilitarians. They're only utilitarians in the form of exchange value, of prices and circulation. And they can just make shit up. Famously, they do just
Yeah,
make shit
I
up.
would say like, the value of stuff these days is just sort of based on what idiots
Hmm.
think.
Yes, and luckily
Each couple of stocks,
Loads of them
for
are in
example.
California, which was the Israel of its day, and Israel, which is the California of its day now. I would recommend everyone
Yeah.
check out Malcolm Harris's book Palo Alto about the history of Californian eugenics. And basically, I mean, at some points actually there were some groups who were setting this up their own sort of independent separatist state in Northern California to intentionally displace the natives there, and they modelled that on the Israeli project. Alex Stoffel's excellent book Eros and Empire is no good place to turn for that. But I am very skeptical. I think there's kind of an ideological and economic deadlock that the Israelis and the US are kind of stuck in, which is they these people haven't heard the word no in quite some time. They are locked into a media environment, an informational environment of complete and total impunity and self affirmation. And I think they are more likely to run everything into a brick wall and just let it explode rather than sort it. And this is why occasionally Israel likes to, talk about the Samson option, the idea that this secret nuclear program they have, which isn't that secret, so if we can't have it, no one can. There is kind of a
Yeah.
toddler thing to this because settlers. I mean, it's unfair to toddlers. I think it's a settler mindset, not a toddler mindset. I mean, thinking
Yeah.
about the amount of Afrikaners, white South Africans that are in control of the biggest tech companies now, like Peter Thiel, I mean it's pronounced Peter Thiel, and Elon Musk, and the Afrikaners who claimed asylum in the States who now fucking hate it. These people are so used to total impunity that they do just have to break. They just have to be
Yeah.
broken. They have to be broken by a hard contact with reality. And you can see many of the Israeli soldiers who have been sort of marinated in this ideology are seeing this fantasy break. Not enough to give the stuff back, I've noticed. Now they're
Hmm.
not there are a growing number of refuseniks, not get who are taking the I think
What is it gone to 3 now?
yeah well
I'm
about
I'm not being fair, and I have to say,
it is a
massive
vastly
shout
small
out to the
proportion,
review.
but complete support to the refuseniks to those who refuse to serve in the IDF. But I do think it is really hard to escape the ideology of Zionism, liberal or fascist. I think they're very similar, to be
What does
honest.
liberal Zionism mean anymore, though?
Liberal
Because the thing is, like,
Zionism means that you think that Netanyahu is the problem, and if you get rid of him, everything will be fine. And you might want to return to, maybe if you're a radical liberal Zionist, 1967 borders. But most of liberal Zionism is you demand something that's so impossible and something that the Israeli government will never provide for, so that you can at least do a bit of weeping and do a fucking land acknowledgement next to the statue, memorializing all the people that you have fucking killed. That's what liberal Zionism is. It's a deflection tactic.
liberalism. Yeah, and like, liberalism in general is like where basically I have all these lofty principles that I always adhere to, except when I don't want to. And most of my lofty principles is what I think other people think is normal. I really just want to go to brunch, to be honest.
But I'm very skeptical that they are going to turn on Israel very quickly. I mean, so for example, let's think of a previous case when they turned on an apartheid regime that was invading all of its neighbours. In the case of apartheid era South Africa, apartheid era South Africa. I mean, the fall of that was not only, of course, due to military overstretching, for example, their defeats in Angola, places like that, but also the growing number of the AOC. It was partially also due to the fact that, and not mostly, but just partially due, but this was significant, the fall of the Soviet Union. It was no longer a bulwark against communism because they did not, in terms of combating Soviet influence, and it was kind of allowed to fall. Now, I don't know what Israel's a bulwark against. Maybe it's bulwark, as you said, Hamas, Islamism, sort of a non-capitalist resistance to Western colonialism, absolutely. But at the same time,
The
I
thing
do
that
think,
baffles me about that
mm,
is it's not exactly like, Al Qaeda trying to hit the long enemy. Like, Hamas isn't. I mean, like, this is why Israel has to be like, Hamas is ISIS. It's like, no, they're the fucking opposite. Like, they're a national liberation movement, and ISIS denies the existence of any existing nations or the legitimacy of them. Like, they just want their fucking land back. And like Iran just like wants to not be, a comprador dictatorship under a Shah, and they want their fucking oil. Hezbollah just wants Lebanon to actually have any capabilities of self-defense, and fucking Ansar Allah just wants fucking UAE and fucking Saudi Arabia to stop trying to colonize their country. And I'm not saying that's all there is to these movements, but that's the main shit. That's like 80% of it. And if you want more proof of this, I've shown Adam this footage. There's some resistance footage, right? If you ever think, well, it's all about religion, they're all Islamists and they just want jihad. There's footage of, because the resistance factions fight alongside each other a lot of the time, and there's footage of a Soraya al-Quds fighter and an Ali Mustafa Brigade fighter sharing a mortar, alternating the shells. So the Ali Mustafa fighter, he's a fighter of the PFLP, Marxist-Leninists, right? And the Soraya al-Quds fighter is of Palestinian Islamic Jihad, who are arguably more jihadists than Hamas are, right? These two people should hate each other. One side is Marxist-Leninist, one side is Islamic jihadist. And yet they share a fucking mortar and fire shells at the Israelis, because this is a national liberation struggle. They did the same thing with Ho Chi Minh and with the Cubans, where they tried to, they're crazy communists, and they were like, actually, we care about national liberation. Like, the funny thing about Cuba is, they kept calling them communists, and then Fidel Castro was like, fine, we'll be fucking communists then, whatever. I'm sure it wasn't exactly like that, but like, they weren't explicitly communist until the Americans kept calling them communists, and then they had, their national liberation. They went with communism. But then Ho Chi Minh as well, he was never a big communist guy. He just wanted national liberation first, and that was their slogan.
Well, we're not allowed to hear anything from resistance. We're not allowed to hear anything. We'll have to use a fucking VPN to see any videos. Jeremy Scahill, he talks to Hamas people. He's the only journalist I've ever seen who actually talks to anyone. Usually in a war, you tend to talk to both sides. But it's not, because it's like, it's not like the fucking Nazis in occupied Poland would let, anyone interview Abakovna when he's fighting in the brigades in the Warsaw Ghetto. Of course he fucking wouldn't, because as soon as you let these people speak, they become human. And I mean, I would really recommend the book Perfect Victims by Mohammed El-Kurd. It cuts through so much of the media bullshit in which Palestinians have to talk about, oh yeah, but they're attacking women, as if Palestinian men aren't being attacked for their very existence. Like, it is so absolutely dehumanizing. And they have, not only do they have right to rebel under international law, it's a quote fucking Chem, it was right to fucking rebel anyway. Because we've seen what these people are doing. They are coming to kill absolutely everyone. And they'll even kill them. They'll even kill their own people and then pin it on you.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is, like, there's just so many examples. I've already talked about Syria. Oh, surrender. Okay, we're going to bomb you anyway. Oh, disarm and leave, PLO in the 1980s from southern Lebanon. Oh, don't worry. We'll make sure the civilians don't get harmed. Oh, suddenly thousands of civilians are being fucking massacred in the most brutal way possible in the Sabra Shatila massacre. Oh, lay down your arms, Hamas. Just give us your arms. Lay down your arms, Hezbollah. Like this, they've been here before. It's all happened. And my main point is, you would fucking be wanting to pick up a gun if it was you. Anyone listening to this, because of course you fucking would. Like, and to go back to this idea that, oh, but the terrorists, they prescribe terrorist organization. Right? To go back to my example, Soraya al-Quds, PIJ, prescribed terrorist organization, not allowed to say I support them, not allowed to invite reckless support for them. However, Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, not to be confused with the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine General Command in Syria, fucking splitters, but the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, the Ali Mustafa brigades, are not proscribed. So you can watch that video, and whenever the guy in the red headband fires his mortar shell, you can go, yeah, Ali Mustafa brigades, yeah. And then when the Soraya al-Quds one launches the mortar, you have to go, no, prescribed group, no. And then when the red guy, you go, yeah, Ali Mustafa, yeah, get him. And then when it's the black headband, no, bad, no. Now it's terrorism. Now it's resistance. Now it's terrorism. Now it's resistance. Now it's terrorism. Resistance, terrorism. It's the same shell being fired out the same mortar, but when the guy with the black headband does it, it's terrorism, and you're not allowed to support it. And when the red guy does it, that's fine. For now, they'll probably proscribe PFLP after we finish recording this video. But they'll probably prescribe your fucking nan by 2029. So
I mean, it was the technically largest terrorist attack ever. You know, in the UK, because they arrested about
Oh
520
God,
people
yeah.
outside of Parliament for holding a sign, which is a sign of a very strong government. But don't worry, they're being dictated to by Farage anyway, who, when he announced his plan to do mass deportations, weirdly he got like a 2 hour platform for that, despite the fact he only has 4 MPs, and weird that. On the party political broadcast where he declared that, that we were going to send everyone back. He announced his plan for the fucking camps. And of course, to be used with data technology, new data technology. The wonder who's going to run that. Maybe it's be Palantir, that's run by Oswald Mosley's grandson. But we can't talk about that, apparently. Yes, of course we can, actually. It's not illegal to talk about Palantir. And then Starmer went, oh, you're betraying our armed forces by doing the Taliban. Oh, also, we deported way more people than you. And it turns out the Labour Party are the lesser evil. They're not. I mean, I used to describe them as the left wing of fascism, but there's nothing left wing about Labour Party. I think, in terms
No,
of electorally, unless we have some sort of miracle with your party, which
I'm gonna take this off
yeah,
now.
I don't think we will. It feels like
My head's getting
a
sweaty.
reform government is more or less the press are trying to make it happen. They're declaring it should
Yeah,
happen,
I mean it's kind of
and
obvious
if
that
they
it's
can
the only route.
prescribe Palestine action, and also like trump up as many charges as they can to arrest people who are there was a sort of occupation of the top of a Wolverhampton. No, a couple of days ago on Tuesday, occupation of a Wolverhampton for branch of Moog. He might know from synthesizers, but the other part of the company also makes weapons, or a sister company to it. They are locking people up, and constantly, and they are going to crack down this, because the only thing the Labour Party only has, the Labour Party, we think of them as this lovely party, give us the NHS. They're not. They're not.
Do we?
Well, some people
I don't
do.
think we do
They
anymore.
did well because
Is there anyone left who's still like, oh yeah,
well,
Labour,
Nye
they were
Bevan
right
had to
on?
do that to create the NHS against Labour Party, and then the same year the Labour Party did that, they also struck Agent Orange on people Malaya. So, frankly, the Labour Party have always been social fascists, and I'll never describe them otherwise. But
They also withdrew dental care from the
to
NHS to
afford the
increase
war in
military
Korea,
spending
yeah.
in the Korean War,
But currently, there's
which was a lot more brutal than you
I
actually
mean,
think it was.
the solution to everything the Labour Party seems to have is just to put the problem in a camp,
Yeah.
and that's not because they're
Well,
spiritually Israeli or because they're Zionists, because they're a fucking British party, and that's what Britain is. It's a coalition of the English
but
and Scottish ruling class to turn everything else in the world into their fucking plaything.
it's true. But I'm gonna come out with some optimism here. Right? I'm gonna give it a little optimistic razzle dazzle, and I'm pulling it back to what we started talking about. The fact that Israel are fucking useless at fighting Palestinian resistance and the effectiveness of resistance, right? Because everyone keeps talking about the dystopian nature of the fact that, like, oh, as I said, genocide's coming home because the Israelis are going to train our armed forces, right? And there's all these connections between Israeli cop city in Atlanta and the Israelis and the American police, and how it's that what's happening is they're training the Israelis are training all these police forces and all these militaries in the use of AI, and which doesn't exist, and all this sophisticated surveillance technology, but it's losing technology because they're losing in Gaza. They're losing against a besieged, starved resistance, and they're losing. And one of the problems they have, one of the big issues that Israel has right now is an energy crisis because they're actually a coal-powered country, right? They use coal, and they get most of their coal. They got most of their coal from Colombia, and Colombia stopped sending coal because of the genocide. It's not just about electricity to power people's homes. All of this AI shit takes a lot of fucking energy, right? When you're deciding that you're going to integrate all your shit with all this technology that's highly dependent on data centers and energy and fresh water, all I'll say is the abdomen of the beast becomes rather exposed.
Yes, but it depends where the data centers are, because all you need to send Israel is the results. The computational process can happen in loads of different places, including in the
That's
UK. We have
true.
two massive. This is why data centers are such a welcome target, even because they're built like fucking castles. You know why? Because because people know that they have something in there worth killing. and that's the servers, that's the server farms. Because if you destroy that, you destroy the computational power that is required to generate these kill lists. Now, does the IDF need help to generate kill lists? No. But it does speed the process up, and they're killing everyone anyway. I mean, I was looking at Isaac Schotner's recent Isaac Schotner, a brilliant interviewer, and he was talking to a Biden admin guy, and the Biden admin guy basically admitted that we kill children of Hamas fighters. Of course, Hamas fighter in this case means anyone in the government, anyone who ever worked for any governmental apparatus in Gaza, because they are the elected government of Gaza. They are a civil and municipal authority. The Israelis have a so-called AI called Where's Daddy. Put two and two together. They use it to find families and exterminate them. And it is accelerated and sort of justified for speculative investors through this image of so-called artificial intelligence. It's not like I've been writing on this for the past, I don't know, 3 fucking years. But that's the problem with writing about stuff about the rise of fascism. You're not being right in the worst way. And the problem is these data centers, though, is that there is such a castle apparatus around. I mean, the state is absolutely so scared because they will just lock up everyone. And I don't know if simply filling the jails beyond their capacity will do it. I have no idea. I honestly think that the path to fascism in the UK is more or less baked in because for the past 20, 30 years, every channel has just been going, be fascist, be fascist, be fascist, be fascist. Like, it's like the closest thing we've ever had to democracy is fucking X Factor. And every single platform is going, immigration this. We never talk about immigration. That's the only thing we ever fucking talk about. And I think in some ways we are not prepared for how bad things have gotten. I mean, this is the 2nd year of pogrom season. And for what? So the fucking septics can extract a little bit of value from resource politics in the Middle East, and some of our petulant ruling class could scrape a little bit off the top while saying thank you, Daddy. All of this for what? Not as if anything could justify this, but it's just another insult to injury of just the raw fucking impunity of just this absolute stupid fucking configuration of the world we live in.
Yeah, and it's just baffling that so many people seem to be. I guess people aren't behind it because we don't really have democracy, and the media is very tightly controlled by the interests of a few. So, it's like
the Australians.
yeah,
but returning to the scene of the crime to punish us.
Occasionally, you're just like, wait, so is most of the people in this country just like horrible fascists? And it's like, well, not really. It's just you can just astroturf it, and then people start going along with it. You know what I mean? Like I've heard about people who older people who never previously said anything racist, suddenly just coming out with racist shit, and it's because of a fucking TikTok algorithm or whatever. They start watching all this shit, and then they start literally just coming. Just like algorithmic brain poison.
Even going to protests and hearing about concerned locals, I'm like, well, who gives a shit about concerned locals? Because concerned locals.
The word concern makes me fucking shudder.
The locals are mostly organising on Facebook. What they're seeing on Facebook is mostly AI generated images, which they might even think are false, and they'll just go, well, the fact that I could believe it though really says something, doesn't it? People are living in a constantly digitised fantasy world. But it's the only thing giving explanation for their problems, but because they can consume it with an infinite scroll, and there's nothing stopping them from scrolling at all, it's a lot easier to get those very easy answers with things that seem real, that seem to adequate to your reality, than the truth. And the truth is, frankly, to be seen. And also, the problem with the truth as well is that the truth doesn't tell you what to do. Say, okay, it's this entire system here. Everyone's been so atomized and alien to go, how do we fight that? And the only way to fight is collectively and together. But easier said than done, because you enter in sort of the systems of our sort of our traditions of collective resistance, and they've mostly ossified into old Trotskyist gits who think they have the ideas. They never had the ideas, and then we all join something. It splits up into infighting, not because of what books people read, but because of the traditions of organisation people have, the traumas of defeat we never properly worked through, and it all just stagnates and dies.
Yeah, and the other problem with it is just if it's hard to pull people over to the left in a way, because you're so the problem is we've got this sort of capitalist class, and they kind of, own a lot of the media, and they kind of control the government, and democracy is kind of a sham, and we have to fight this enormous security state that's not even just national, it's also like this global issue, this spiraling to fight against these, sophisticated surveillance systems, and all organized together and collectively imagine a better future. And if you're a fascist, you just go, the problem to your life, you see those people over there? Yeah, it's them. They did it. If you just fuck those people up, those vulnerable people who can't really speak for themselves, all your problems will go away. Like, it's a much more satisfying. People, it's like when the whole problem with the military, not just in Israel, but also it's like where they want if you're a hammer, every problem is going to like people want an easy target. They want an easy solution. They want an easy answer. And like Grima Wormtongue, fascists will just say, you see, it's those people there. And you can cobble together a stupid narrative. It's like people say house prices are expensive because all them immigrants came over and drove up the cost of housing. That's total bollocks. But if you don't know anything else about how the housing market works, you'll be like, okay. And, 5 seconds later, you're a fascist. You know what I mean? It's like, because then it's so simple. You just get rid of the immigrants and the problems go away. And then when you get rid of the immigrants and the problems don't go away, it's like, well, it must be them people over there. And then you become this sort of fascist Ouroboros and a spiral eating itself until there's nothing left.
Well, it's like the Martin Niemöller poem. He says it begins first they came for the communists. Well, in the US it says first they came for the socialists because Reagan made sure they had it changed in the Holocaust museums over there. But Martin Niemöller was a fucking Nazi. And I've seen it.
Really?
Even he was a fucking Nazi, and suddenly they came for him, and he was like, and finally they came. There's a reason why they came for him last in that sequence, why he was so amenable to the regime in the first place. He was definitely compliant enough for regime that he was the last person on that fucking list. But
I mean, on that subject, that's the thing, right? Because that's the thing I forgot to mention when speaking about Palestine. One thing I want to talk about is this societal shift that they've had, where Israel, like, if you didn't know this, if this is shocking news, on October 7th, I'm just going to fucking say it. On October 7th, about half the Israelis were killed by the Israeli army. About half, right? That's speculation. I don't know that. You don't know that. We're never going to know. It's way too late for an independent investigation, probably. But based on testimony and shit that's been released from helicopter pilots, Israeli eyewitnesses, Yoav fucking Gallant himself, everyone you need to hear, they killed shitloads of their own people, right, on October 7th. A, because they were panicking, didn't know what the fuck to do, and B, because they didn't want anyone taken captive. And some people advance this ridiculous idea. I think the Green Party had this in their manifesto. They had the best position on Palestine, but their position was, Hamas baited Israel into a genocide trap. Have you ever heard this argument?
Sorry, what Green Party is this? This is the Israeli Green Party, you mean?
No, UK.
Wow. Well, this is why we need to vote. I'd like to think that isn't that, but then also if you're in the Green Party and the election's still open, please vote for Zach Polanski. Genuinely seems to be a cracking fella. Met him very briefly once at an event about developing our rail infrastructure. I know he's at the very least good on that as well. He's anti-genocide and anti-fascist, so definitely vote for Comrade Zach if you're in the Green Party, that is. But I mean, this idea of basing, I mean, this is just this is the logic of people I've known previously who know what they're doing is wrong. Right, and they know what they're doing is wrong, and they know they're doing it very publicly. And then they sort of say, well, it's a conspiracy to point this out. I was like, oh, yes, you would say that, wouldn't you, that I'm doing something wrong. But you're not pointing that out because you really don't like the thing I'm doing wrong. You're pointing out because there's something good about me that you actually hate because you're a bad person. No, the past 75 years I've said this, the Israeli project has been like that, whether it's been Labour Zionist or Fascist Zionist, which I think are both variations on the same thing. Sorry, that's been the project the whole time. Kill people, take their stuff.
I can't find the thing in the manifesto, so it might be misremembering.
Yeah, okay. So. We'll edit this out. I'll keep in the Zach Polanski thing.
But yeah, basically, like, there's people who, I can't remember who said this recently, who said, there was an American who said it. He said, you see, it wasn't American, it was fucking Bono. It was Bono from U2's statement where he said,
gives a shit what that stupid cunt says? I hope the IRA gets him.
Yeah, no, true. But he said, they released a whole manifesto. Each member said their thing about it. And Bono was saying, basically that Hamas had baited Israel into a genocide trap. Now, it's interesting. This is a really good point. It's not a good point. It's a shit point. It's a good starting point to explain how wrong this is. If you wanted to bait people into genociding you, why would you take a bunch of hostages and hold them next to you while you did it? Like, bank robbers rob the bank. Right, we want the police to kill all of us to show how brutal they are. So let's take a bunch of hostages. Doesn't make any fucking sense, does it?
This is the cheat the sneaky Hamas knew that the Israelis were so genocidal they wouldn't care.
Yeah, well, that's the point, right? Hamas completely misjudged Israel. They kind of did a Nasrallah, because Nasrallah made the same fucking mistake in 2006, right? Israel withdrew from Lebanon in 2000 because they couldn't face Hezbollah's continued resistance. But the problem was, there was still a bunch of Hezbollah captives, prisoners in Israeli prisons, and they didn't want to release them. So Hezbollah basically launched a rocket diversion, fire an anti-tank missile at a Humvee. I think they kill one soldier, kidnap two, right? And what they're going to do is they're going to negotiate the release of these soldiers to get their prisoners out. Prisoner exchange, easy, job done. No. Israel go, fuck off. We're going to try and kill the captives so we don't have to negotiate with you. And then we're going to bomb the shit out of Dair and whatever. And they launch this thing, and Hezbollah go, oh, fuck, we're in a war now. Launch a bunch of rockets at northern Israel, and it ends in a ceasefire with most non-Zio cult morons admit that Hezbollah definitely won that war against Israel. Israel really failed to make much ground. There was a Merkava tank massacre called the Merkava Massacre. It went very poorly for them. They achieved nothing. Now, the Gazas are just a way more extreme version of the same thing. Because there's other times, like look at the Gilad Shalit deal, right? They got 1,000, including Yahya Sinwar, 1,000, Palestinian prisoners released for one tank gunner, right? That was in 2018? That happened? Something like that? It went on for a long time, and there's a bit more to it than that. But that's what they're thinking. They're thinking, oh, this is an insurance policy. It's like Gilad Shalit times 250. Unfortunately, wrong. They completely misjudged the fact that when they humiliated Israel and when they collapsed the Gaza division and put an existential fear into Israel by completely uprooting their containment strategy, they no longer gave a shit about the lives of their own people. And not just the government, but the people too. Imagine if there was a massacre, like a prison break in this country, and 100 people were killed, and it turns out that the police actually killed 50 of those people. Imagine there would be outrage.
I mean, not in these Israel, days, we're so used to the fucking Israelis doing it.
Yeah, I mean, true. But like, the Israeli people, this isn't reported in Western media. The Hannibal director, the fact they killed tons they fired a tank shell into a home and killed 12 Israelis that were being taken hostage by Hamas fighters, according to 2 Israeli eyewitnesses, including teenagers. Helicopter gunners said, we emptied our bellies. They fired everything. Go and type in on YouTube Nova Music Festival cars. Look at those cars and ask yourself, what fucking weapons do Hamas have that do that? They're shredded. That's incendiary helicopter fire. They rained down. They had no targeting data. They were using WhatsApp groups. And they openly said that they rained down and fired all the ammunition they had. They were told, don't let anything back into Gaza. A Hermes 450 drone was sent to kill soldiers at the Eretz checkpoint. Specific order. Hannibal Eretz dispatch a Zik, so they wouldn't be taken captive. The list goes on, right? And then in Gaza, are they going to negotiate for the release of their captives? No, we're going to solve the issue militarily. Okay, how well's that gone? They managed to rescue, 4 captives by murdering 270 Palestinians by carpet
and
bombing.
And shooting a few of the hostages as well. Don't forget that.
Not proven. I want to see the proof. Hamas came out with a statement because they kept saying the only way you'll get your captives back is through negotiation. And the Americans, they managed to get 4 back. They botched the exfil. The commander of the operation was killed, and they carpet bombed a busy market and killed almost 300 Palestinians. And Hamas came out saying, you killed 3 of your own captives. One of them had an American passport. Show me the passport, and then I'll believe you. Not saying it's not true. I'm saying it hasn't been proven. Just want to point
it's
that out.
Not like Israel.
I'm scrupulous on the details.
It's like America cares if Israel killed their own citizens, still deport their own fucking citizens to support Israel, mostly because it's part of their own foreign policy. Not, again, Israel doesn't have a supernatural power over the US. It's because it has nothing to do, for example, For example, if it was some sort of racial power of Jewishness, otherwise my Jewish friends who are anti-Zionists would have some sort of magical power over their local governments, but they don't because they're not Zionists, and Zionism is an ideology which completely aligns at the moment with US foreign policy. That's why it's doing it, because the US is a global empire. You know,
It's
I've
also
seen
why
some
Tommy
people,
Robinson
yeah,
likes it,
I think, yeah, Tony Robinson
because
considers
he
himself to
wants
be
to
a
do that
proud
here.
proud Zionist. People want to see it being done here. I mean, this is why they're exporting the same technology, and this is why we have to resist the sort of rises in anti-Semitism, makes that conflation that exactly that the Zionists want us to make. Many of whom, of course, are not Jewish; they are evangelical Christians. But overall, just the I mean, I can't help but think this as being a complete consequence of the utter impunity that Western capitalist governments have had. Well, capitalist governments in general have had over the past. Always. I mean, at the very least, we got the NHS to some extent because they were afraid enough of communism that they were willing to give us something, and only some of us something. I mean,
And there's
for,
a big fuck off war and a
I
Holocaust that kind of like shifts things around. Any big wars mean that you end up with central planning
well,
because
not that
yeah,
one big war led to that. We don't know if the others do. I mean, that was World
mm,
War II might have been the exception. We don't know because I mean, austerity. Liberals are fine with killing hundreds of thousands of people. We saw that with
yeah,
austerity. We saw that with 300,000 of austerity. We saw that with the Iraq War. We see it with Afghanistan. We've seen it with Libya. We've seen it with the migrant crisis. The fact that the
seen
Mediterranean
it
in
with
English Channel was a mass grave. These people have no. Basically, the Nazis won the Second World War because only 10
yeah,
top Nazis were killed at Nuremberg. Most of them in subsequent American military trials were acquitted. Jacob Geller has a great video on this recently called Fantasies of Nuremberg. The
yeah, it's good
methods
that.
of a militarized anti-communism to create a white supremacist transnational empire, essentially a Fourth Reich, has gone completely undeterred throughout the 20th century, after the Second World War, and especially accelerated since the fall of the Soviet Union, which of course had its problems, was at least holding us back from this kind of shit. And they have been completely impunitus the entire time. I mean, Grenfell,
Yeah,
Windrush, the mass deaths under COVID, the implantation of COVID patients into care homes. I mean, has there been any mass slaughter of its own people that any of our governments haven't gotten away with? None. There's been
yeah,
absolutely none.
yeah, it's true.
And so they know that they can do whatever they like to us, and we'll sit there. They know we can do whatever we
But
like to
it,
everyone else, and they're not going to be stopped until they're fucking stopped. And I'm sorry, you can't like vote this out. You cannot even, and I don't know what to do because the security apparatus is going to be looking at us right now. Like it's not because they're looking at us specifically, because they're surveying everything through their mass data processing systems, mostly given by Palantir and Anduril. And I have no idea what to fucking do because we've all seen the bombing of Guernica, which was an absolute spectacle that the Spanish Civil War partisans and Republican side try to show the world this is what the future is. And it's been happening every day since Guernica, in every part of the
yeah,
world since. And in terms of their techniques, their aims, and their goals, maybe not their aesthetics, the Third Reich has resolutely won the 20th, and indeed at this rate, the
or,
21st century.
or Fourth Reich if you follow that
Yeah,
thread. But
follow the podcast, the Fourth Reich Archaeology podcast. I'll bring into this. It is that a resounding victory for the forces of anti-communist
yeah,
capitalism, and that is basically fascism.
well, a lot of people know about, for example, Operation Paperclip, which is where a bunch of Nazi scientists were sort of parachuted over to help with the Manhattan Project. But what few people know about, and give this a little Michael Google, look up the Gehlen organization, right? It's GEH. How do I spell it now? GEHLEN, right? This was the Nazi Eastern Front intelligence service. They had all the intelligence on the Soviets, and the Americans had fuck all. And the Gehlen organization got folded into the CIA. They got parachuted over from Nazi Germany and folded into the CIA. And I thought, oh, okay, right. So there's like a group, there's a few Nazis that got added to the CIA, massive organization. No, 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 no. CIA was just getting started. Like a large portion of the foundation of the CIA was Nazis from the Eastern Front because the main thing they care about is the Soviets. They've got no intel on it. So they fucking like a large part of the CIA was made up by Nazis. And another thing was I forget his name. What was the name of that lawyer who basically acquitted a ton of Nazis? He was on the Warren Commission,
I
and
mean,
I
it could be
forget. I can't
anything.
remember his name. But there was this very like influential lawyer, and yeah, he was responsible for just pardoning tons and tons of Nazis, basically. And a lot of them ended up back in Germany. A lot of them ended up. People talk about Argentina and Chile. No, a lot of the Nazi guys ended up back in Germany. A fucking chancellor of Germany in the '60s is a fucking Nazi.
I mean,
Like it
Otto
just
Skorzeny. If you Google Otto Skorzeny, a Waffen SS colonel who basically worked for the Nazis, and he worked for like the Argentine dictatorship, who massacred tens of thousands of Jewish people in a so-called dirty war.
and they got military aid from Israel doing
Yeah.
that. By the
Well,
way,
guess where Otto Skorzeny went to go fucking work next?
oh Israel.
Yeah, he was a fucking Mossad guy. Like I know I'm sounding mad here, but I'm completely serious. The Nazis never went away. They simply embedded themselves in liberal capitalist institutions. The NHS,
Mm.
the NHS's data infrastructure is run by a company called Palantir, and the UK branch of that is run by a man called Lewis Mosley. You won't recognise his last name because his grandfather was Oswald Mosley. And please, everyone, read the book by Edwin Black, IBM, and the Holocaust, because the infrastructure for the Holocaust is, well, the next one after the current, well, the third one, I guess, after the second one we're currently looking at, is fully built into our systems. And when Farage talks about a dataification of the deportations he wants to do, that's going to be run by the same company, Palantir, who runs the NHS. So if you're a migrant or anyone who even could have their citizenship stripped away from you and you want to use the NHS in about 10 years, you might not want to. And so it's going to be the social murder of the disabled, which is already built into our system, accelerated with people who don't look like me and Archie. Like, I cannot stress to
Yeah,
you
and to be honest,
how much the fascism is built in and primed to go and is already operative.
don't look like us, but also like we're the next ones on the chopping board for having the wrong opinions.
And even then, it will be quite a long way down the line, thankfully. But
Yeah,
not thankfully,
yeah,
but
exactly.
but it's I I I cannot
Homegrown, as
underestimate
Trump.
to the extent to which all of this is already in motion, and I have no fucking idea what to do. I literally wrote a book called Anti-Oculus, and then the CEO of Oculus decided to start a company named after a Lord of the Rings bad guy, and then built so-called AI-powered cameras on the bottom of the south coast to find migrants. It's they won't tell you this because so far we're too busy arguing on like Jeremy Vine or something about whether or not Syrians are people or something. But the fascist infrastructure is so built into what British governance usually is that I have no fucking idea how to stop it, and it's not going to be pretty stopping it. It's not going to be good stopping it. I don't know if we're going to have the will to stop it. I don't know if we can stop it, but nonetheless, fuck me, we have to. Because to quote Chumbawamba, the Nazis never really went away, and we will never, and we will never rest again till every Nazi
On
fucking
that
dies.
note, no, but one other thing that I'm interested in is we were touching on this is how you mentioned that like our government gets away with social murder, right? And that's true. But I wouldn't exactly equivocate that with what the Israelis have done. Like, sure, and I don't want to dismiss it,
Mm.
like sending likely COVID infected old people back to their care homes with no checks, knowing that they're obviously going to die and spread it around, shit like that, or killing tens of thousands of people through austerity, those kinds of things are evil, but they're not quite gunning people down with
Oh,
Apache gunships
that's what
or
I think
shooting.
English fascism is going to be. Is that we're going to turn the social murder into a spectacle of which people are actually going for it. I think that's going to be the conversion. I think the conversion between English liberalism and English fascism is going to be that the social murder becomes explicit, spectacular, in the sense people like watch it cheering on, and it becomes more direct. I think the processes are already there. I think what English fascism is going to do is going to make it a source of libidinal satisfaction for a certain portion of the electorate that puts these people into power. I think that's going to be the conversion, the transformation of social murder into just regular fucking murder.
Bring back hanging in pubs.
Yes, basically, bring back hanging in pubs is going to be. I think that's going to be the conversion. I think the conversion of liberalism to fascism is in this case can be the transition of social murder into murder. Murder as a public spectacle, as an auto de fe, if you want to use a sort of Reconquista Spanish example. I think the transition to fascism is going to be the wholehearted embrace of what liberals don't like. And I think you see this in Zionism as well. The liberal Zionists want to look away at the camps. The
Yeah.
Yeah, they call away camps. So it's just passive, as has a pseudo passivity, whereas the fascist wing of Zionism wants to go and do it themselves.
But at the same time, by the same stretch, when as it pertains to the Israelis, they either accept but look away from the killing of Palestinians, or they look with glee at the killing of Palestinians. But the thing that still baffles me is that I was watching this interview with Shir Heaver, this BDS boycott, divest sanctions economist, ex-Israeli. He's like defected from being Israeli. Really good analyst. He was talking. One of the things he was talking about was how about 13 years ago, Ehud Barak, who was the defense minister under Netanyahu, said we need to go to war with Iran because they are right around the corner from having a nuclear weapon. They've been saying that since 1996. And he was asked on this radio interview, but won't Israelis die? And he went, yeah, 500 Israelis will die. If you don't like it, move to Finland. And this was the end of his career. It was such a scandal. This ended his political career. And the next thing Shir was saying was that before the 12-day war, there was a leak from the government, from the cabinet, saying they thought 4,000 Israelis would die, and there's barely a backlash. And that's what I want to tie in with the mass Hannibal on October 7th, the deliberate targeting and bombing of the captives so that they're taken off the negotiating table, the gunning down of 3 escaped captives, and this we didn't kill the Bibas family with airstrikes. No, the Mujahideen brigades, they strangled them to death and then mutilated the bodies to make it look like they were hit by airstrikes. No one actually believes that. Like no one's drank enough lead paint to believe that. So it's almost like this shift to where they won't just accept wanton murder of others, but they seem to accept, and also yeah, fine, let's go into Gaza City. We know a bunch of soldiers are going to get ambushed and killed. There is some protest to it, but a lot less than you would expect. Like, they seem to be more interested in the destruction of Palestinian life than the preservation of Israeli life. And I wonder how exactly that transition happens in the heads of the people, and whether something like that will happen in the UK, where there will be some kind of resistance that will take a toll on the practitioners of fascism, but people just won't, they'll end up killing the quote unquote good ones, and people just won't really care. I don't there'll be some racist Englander who gets accidentally killed in a bombing that was meant to kill a bunch of migrants or something, and people will just be like, oh, whatever, it's got to be done, collateral damage. I just wonder how that transformation. I just don't understand how that transformation happened in Israel. I don't understand how it would happen here. Because we all thought, oh, Israeli society's soft. Once the bombs start dropping, they'll go back to Brooklyn. But actually, they seem to have completely switched and are just full psycho now, happy to die in order to kill Palestinians.
It's the Volksstimme. It's the Volksstimme. It's either we all join together against the eternal enemy, or we cease to exist, which is, of course, stupid. The Jewish people will not cease to exist if Israel falls. If anything, it's a great danger, Jewish people around the world, that Israel still exists, because it is a conflation of a 4,000-year-old religion with a 75-year-old fascist ethno state, which is.
Yeah, I mean, and Israel's the most dangerous place to be for a Jewish person. You're safer as a Jewish person in Iran, and there are Jewish people in Iran, than you are in fucking Israel. And yeah, no, I mean, obviously, if they wanted a safe home, if they just wanted a safe homeland, they could have just, I don't know, moved to Palestine, which had been a safe homeland for Jewish people for hundreds of years. For example, you mentioned the Reconquista, right?
Mm,
Where did some of the Sephardic Jews go when they were booted out by the Catholics? Palestine.
mm.
Lived there for hundreds of years. No issues until the fucking Zionists turned up and started causing all this anger towards the Jewish communities.
Absolutely. And I mean, I just think of the tradition of the Bundists and the tragedy of that, and it's I don't know. I mean, I should everyone if everyone listens to klezmer, I'm quite into klezmer. Everyone check out the song "Oi, your Zionistin," which is always a good one. It's about staying in diaspora and fighting for liberation. But yeah, it is. Again, that's not the main point of this conflict. The main victims of Zionism are the Palestinians, and
Yeah.
it's not those things which is those things we should be centering. Not only because Episode tells so, because we can see this in our actual practice and our actual observation of things. And again, Mohammed El-Kur's book is really good for this. Perfect Victims. Again, I recommend everyone pick it up. And yeah, it is just it is. So I've got my copy here. It is recently out from Haymarket Books. Mohammed El-Kur's Perfect Victims. It is a truly beautiful text. It's most of it our discourse about Palestine, but that's particularly helpful because he's talking to us. I also recommend. We've got some other books here I would recommend as well. I've got a recent book, recent edition, sorry, from Fitzcarraldo, Edward Said, The Question of Palestine, which has Zionism from the standpoint of its victims in it. We've also got this recent poetry collection out from Smokestack called Out of Gaza. And then there's also, it's not in arm's reach, but there's a collection called Interviews of Radical Palestinian Women I'd also recommend. And as well, yes, I mean, Rashid Khalid's 100 Years War in Palestine. Ebb Books put out a good collection recently called, well, not a collection, a translation called On Zionist Literature, the author of whom his name currently escapes me. There's a lot of resource for educating oneself on this. And it kind of it can't
You
help.
sort of don't need to be that
Yeah.
educated because, I mean, you do more about fascism, but like, you know, the whole, it's been said a number of times, the whole Zionist argument is, oh, you don't argue with them, just tell them it's complicated. This is not complicated. This is the simplest, fucking, most one-sided shit that you've ever fucking seen. It's so obvious. It's so obvious to anyone. Like,
Mm.
oh, you look. Oh, that's horrible. Oh, no, that's really bad. Like, that's like saying the fucking Holocaust was complicated. Well, the Nazis, they felt threatened by Jews, and it's like trying to say that was complicated. No, it fucking isn't. It's really fucking simple. It's probably one of the simplest geopolitical conflicts going, but at the same time, yeah, it is important to educate yourself as much as you can about fascism, how it works, and about these kinds of things.
Mhm. And yeah, it's called Interviews of Radical Palestinian Women. It's by a group called the Shoal Collective. Also recommend that as well. It should be free online as well if you can't get it in person.
From Perfect Victims, I've only started reading it, but the one thing that I really like, because I had really bad phrases for this concept, and he has much better phrases. I
Mm.
was saying, we need to stop going for kind of a rhetorical trench warfare strategy and go for more of a rhetorical blitzkrieg, which is a bit of an unfortunate way of
Yeah.
putting it. So glad that I read in his book the term, obviously the politics of appeal is much better than rhetorical trench warfare, and raising the ceiling is much better than rhetorical, much better than the term rhetorical blitzkrieg, which is unfortunately named. But yeah, you need to, don't fall for the politics of appeal. Don't try and defend some soft, middling, no, raise the fucking ceiling. Go all the fucking way. Don't compromise. Don't cede a fucking inch. Go all the fucking way and stand fucking there. And don't accept any ifs
Yeah.
or buts or backing off from that.
Don't just
No.
talk about women and children, because the men and the women, and indeed the fighters of men and women, do not deserve to die either. They are
Yeah.
fighting for their very existence.
Was the boy shot on the West Bank throwing a rock? Why were the fucking soldiers illegally occupying the West Bank in the first place?
A lot of
And
them
that's
are
another thing.
British as well. British, Russian,
Yeah, a lot of
Ukrainian.
them.
A lot of people hate
French,
Russians
all of
these
it.
days. Well, I don't hate Russians these days. They're occupying this particular piece of land. I've noticed that. But there we go.
Yeah. And I just, this is another thing people say, well, what are you going to do about this? It's so difficult to solve. It's actually really not very difficult to solve at all. It's all just about the right of return. Let the refugees who were displaced in 1948 return to their land. Right? Very simple. And then all former Israelis have full right and license to live, work, and prosper in a free Palestine, apart from the war criminals who have to face consequences, right? And most Israelis will either fight to the death to pretend the ethno state because they don't want to live side to side by Palestinians, or they'll fuck off and try and colonize Cyprus, which they're already doing, or they'll go back to Brooklyn or France or Britain or wherever, or they will be the few that aren't completely fucking insane and be like, yeah, fine, we'll just live in Palestine now. There are Israelis who are saying, I don't call myself Israeli anymore. I call myself, they're trying to come up with the term. Like, I call myself a kind of Palestinian, you know what I mean? Like, because at the end of the day, like, you can't really help if you're born in a settler colony. You're not necessarily a nutter. At the same time, the youth of Israel seems to be particularly fucking genocidal and nuts. So, but there are, like we said, there are a number of refuseniks. I wish I had thought of this before. I would have read out their names to give them all fucking shout out, because these are people going straight against the grain, proper fucking heroes. There are real human beings of conscience who are able to go up against all that social pressure, probably all that kind of societal pressure, because they're so confident that they know what's right and that this is fucking wrong. And it's depressing how few people there are. Goes back to what you're saying about liberal Zionists and shit, all these centrists and stuff. They want to appeal to what's normal and what's expected to them. They just want to conform to what's expected of them and what's normal. They don't have any real moral foundation to any of their
They
beliefs.
don't want to be yelled at. That's their main politics.
Yeah.
They don't want to be yelled at.
They want to say, well, he's saying blue and he's saying yellow, so I guess green is reasonable. Like, that's, he's saying that I've pissed myself and he's saying I haven't pissed myself, so maybe I've pissed myself a little bit. That's the normal reason. People think that the two-state solution is the moderate, reasonable solution when it's a nonsense solution. And I would also advise you, if someone brings this up, why aren't you calling it partition anymore, mate? Why did you have to rebrand it as two-state solution? Is it because when you tried the two-state solution in India, it didn't go so well? Do I hear Operation Sindor? Oh yeah, two peaceful states living alongside each other. Can't see any fucking issues that are going to come out of that. Also, mate, where are the borders? Where are the borders of these two states? Like, the two-state solution is the most extreme, batshit fucking way to try and solve this. It is absolutely, it's a ludicrous idea. But yeah, I mean, anyone who says that is just making noises. There was a guy who quit the UN who said in an interview that, like, yeah, we joke about two-state solution all the time. You have to say two-state solution because it's the party line in the UN. But everyone jokes to each other because we know it's a joke. It's not a workable thing. And that's why all the politicians, we're very committed to a two-state solution. Like, whenever you hear that phrase, it's a nonsense phrase. It doesn't fucking mean anything. And if you were to do it on 67 borders and kick out the settlers, Israel would collapse anyway and you get one state solution anyway. So in that regard, maybe you should say, yeah, two-state solution, but any hollow Starmer or whatever who's a Zionist never actually believes in a substantive two-state solution, like even a 67 border solution.
I think you have to remind people that Starmer once said that he's a Zionist without qualification.
What was the thing he tried to? Oh, he tried to justify the starvation as well early on. He was like,
They said they do have that right to cut off water and power.
Very much in line, Sir Kid Starver.
And I think Starmer is kind of a bit of an outlier to the extent he's actually fully. I mean, I don't think he believes in anything, but I do think he believes in this because I think he is genuinely, he knows that's the best thing for his career. But I think he does just believe in it in general. I think he just believes in it because.
I've said it since he sort of took over as Labour leader. When you cut Keir Starmer, he does not bleed. He simply oozes a clear fluid and goes, "Oh no, my fluid! I'm losing my fluid."
No, I welcome the cuts. I welcome the cuts. I always welcome cuts. But I believe to be sensible cuts, I think the fluid should come out in an orderly way. And I think I'm going a bit drowsy now. I'm losing too much fluid. Look, Starmer. I mean, he's Keir Starmer, Kid Starver. There's nothing you can't say about him that won't be accurate because I mean I don't even know who to compare him to be honest. He's not even Chamberlain. He's not even I can't even. He's uniquely satanic as a figure who is just purely pulled together by.
He's like Blair's Blair. He's like the copy of Blair. He's like if Blair was really shit for that moment, and then Blair created a whole other shit moment, and we got all this Tory shit. He's the next Blade. He's like you know that Rick and Morty episode where they have the copies making copies of each other, and then they end up being like made up of wood and shit. He's like the one like several. He's like an inbred like fucking Habsburg Blair.
Oh my god, government by simulacrum. What if someone wrote an essay about that quite recently?
Yeah, check that out. It's in good
That's
shit.
in Splinter Mag. We'll link it down below.
And I'll link that article from Robert Inlakesh and Al-Mayadeen, and also the Cradle article about the IDF breaking
You can still
down.
access it in this
I did the
fucking
Navarra
country.
thing. I did the Navarra I did the Media Navarra thing with my voice.
I'm Aaron Bastani. I believe that the right wing actually have a point. And do you know what? That's a sensible thing to do because they let me sit in a high chair next to them when I go on GB News.
And that's all we have to talk about today on Pub Goth Transmission. Shall we end it there? I don't know.
We should end it there. Archie, what is the instructable for today?
Right, the instructable, a lot of us enjoy, medicating ourselves because we have been properly prescribed through the routines. Some of us enjoy cannabis, not me, never me, couldn't be me.
I do
Because
not enjoy cannabis. I believe in legalization, but I want to obey the law.
So the thing about cannabis is I do smoke it, but I never inhale. I didn't inhale it. I've never inhaled it. Just, Anyway, this is what they call a water pipe, but everyone knows it as a bong. You may notice there's a bit of resin, there's a bit of tar on there. Not me, I didn't use this. This is somebody else's. I'm just using it as an example, right? A bit dirty, it could do with a bit of a clean. How do you clean it? Stay tuned.
Stay tuned for the cleaning of the water pipe, which, as we know, is a paraphernalia for an illegal substance, and we've not endorsed the use of as the illegal substance. And here on the VAR, we have different media for a different, slightly same, but apparently different, but also the same politics. Like and subscribe.
Shout out Ali Mustafa Brigades.
Perfect end.
Hello, Pub Goth Transmission. Today I'm going to show you how you can clean your bong. So you can see this, it's not too bad, but it's got a good bit of brown resin caked on it. As you can see, the bowl is completely brown. There's a number of ways of doing this. I'm going to show you how I do it, which I think I've developed over a number of years to be as non-messy and as easy as possible. So let's get down to it. Oh, disclaimer. If you have a plastic bong, right, throw it in the fucking bin. Go to your local smoke shop, support your local community businesses. Buy a good glass bong and get yourself some self-respect, mate. So I've filled up the kettle and I've boiled the kettle, so that's the first step. And one thing that I find really useful is these. These are Sainsbury's spice pots, not to be confused with the substantially inferior Tesco ones. So you'll see where they come into use. Now, some people like to use acetone to clean their bong, which is like nail polish remover. Can use that. I use 99% isopropyl alcohol, which I find to be really effective, and it's quite cheap if you get a good link online to buy like 5 litres of it. The other thing I use is salt as an abrader. Now, I've used brushes in the past, and I would avoid using brushes because what happens is when you pull the brush out, it flicks shit everywhere, and it flicks the worst thing ever, which is burnt on tarry weed resin, which stains and you can't fucking get it off. That's why I'm using alcohol in the first place. So I'm going to show you a non-brush method. So one thing I need to do is you've got the bowl here and it's got a gauze in it, and I've just got a bamboo skewer here. I'm just going to poke that gauze out. So out it comes. I've got loads of ash on my phone now, you could have predicted. So get rid of that and we'll put a new one in. And now, I'm just going to, in one of these Sainsbury's pots, I'm going to plop that in there. So that fits nicely in there. We've got our down stem in here. One thing obviously to do, if I just put that there, is drain out the water like that, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this down stem back in here. Now what we want to do is first use boiling water. Now boiling water is not going to clean any of the resin off because it's water, and weed resin, you should know, is lipophilic, it's hydrophobic. That's why you need the alcohol. But this is a really important step because what it does is it melts and softens the resin and all the burnt on tar resin. It softens it and melts it right up so it's ready to dissolve into the alcohol. Second thing is it might not soak up the resin itself, but many components, the tannins and things, they're all hydrophilic, and so they will be absorbed by the water. So first step is soak it in boiling water. So with the bowl here, it's in this separate glass thingy. I'm going to try not to get any boiling water on my foot. So that's totally submerged, and you can see shit's already floating to the top there. Here I'm going to pour this in the top. Right, and that's already poured out there because of course it has. So I'll let that soak in that section. The top section, sort of above here, I'd actually have to worry about soaking or heating the glass because there's just not much residue in the top region, so that'll be taken care of. Coming back to the bowl, it's in this boiling water. I've screwed the lid on. Now the lid's not super watertight, it's just a spice pot, so I'm holding it in this tea towel that is going to get a bit of splash on it. So you don't do this if it's like a new fresh tea towel and you don't want to get shit on it. I'm going to put this in the, I'm going to clean this one after I've done this. Give it a little shake in the boiling water. That'll clean a lot of the shit off it, to be honest, before you even need any alcohol. Where did I put the bong? Here it is. So the bong here, probably dump that up. So that's probably nice and softened up now. One thing I do want to do actually is I'm just going to tip water. Oh god, that's gone on my hand. Okay, so don't film this while you're doing it because you'll just end up pouring boiling water on your own hand. So now that I've drained the water out of here, the next step is I'm going to put some salt in it and some isopropyl. So let's grab the salt and a teaspoon. Edit this bit out, or I won't, depends on what can be asked. So that's some salt, just a teaspoon of it. In we go, second teaspoon, we'll do 2 teaspoons of salt. In we go. And I'm going to move the salt away from everything because I use that for food as well. Don't want to get fucking weed resin in my regular salt. So now I'm going to get, I should have the isopropyl in a smaller bottle because if you have it in a big bottle, it's good to decant it and make sure you label it. There you go. So I'm just going to give this a little squirt. Just a little squirt. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to squirt a bit of it into down the down stem. But I'm just trying to get these bits of salt down the thing really. So now I've got some isopropyl alcohol, so I put my hand over the top and I shake this. And because the down stem's in there, apologies to issues in filming this, my phone decided I didn't have any storage space left. Because when you delete something on this phone, it doesn't actually delete, it goes to some trash folder, and then when you delete it from the trash folder, it goes into a different trash folder, because life is hell and innovation is a lie. So I'm giving it a shake. Anyway, the good news is, look at that. It's already fucking doing the do, innit? Is it doing the say? I don't know, we'll find out. But look, it's fucking doing the do, innit? Look at that. So, salt and isopropyl. Right, meanwhile, this lad here has been soaking in here. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to open it up. I'm going to use a pair of tweezers to pull them out and put them in there. And then I'm going to probably use the ISO from here to save, so I don't have to waste too much of it, you know. But I'll put some fresh salt in there. So yeah, I'm just going to grab that. I'm really good at filming the thing next to what I'm trying to be filming. I might even just give it a quick rinse, you know. Which means I'm going to drop it. Right, so you can see like a lot of it's melted off. That was a stupid idea actually, because the whole point of doing this is that it's supposed to be hot. So I'm actually just, ignore me, pretend I didn't just do that. I'm dropping it back in here so that the fucking resin is hot so it dissolves readily. which I literally just told you and then forgot myself. Okay, so I'm going to put this in here. I'm going to put some more salt on it in there, and then I'm going to pour out of here into there. You can see the salts there. Now let's add the ISO just out of the bong here. Pouring that in there until it's submerged. There we go. So that's now submerged in the isopropyl alcohol. So I'll just take the lid and screw it on here, which is hard to do with one hand. Right, I'm going to need to stop. So that's now in, sitting in there. You can't even see it. Gren, this is my sacrificial kind of like tea towel I'm going to put in the washing machine after this. Shake it up and down. Shake it all around. And then don't take it out, let it soak, because the bowl is the most like tarred up, like burned up bit. So it will take a while. It needs to sit there, it needs to soak, it needs to dissolve a bit. So let's now focus on the downstem and the main sort of body. So we've still got this salt and shit in here. So I might as well give it one big shake up and down. The remainder to just grab any last bits that stick into the glass. And then I'm probably going to rinse it out with boiling water again. Because when you use cold water, the any residual resin like immediately solidifies. So try and keep it hot if you can. Right, so we've got the kettle here. I'm just going to... Again, I'll probably grasp it with towel here, tea towel there, and give it a bit. Oh, now the tea towel's wet, but only in the corner. Right, and preliminarily, that's now clean, right? So the main body of the bong, oh, there's still some salt there. We'll just give it a rinse with regular water to rinse that salt out. But look, that's looking pretty good. This still needs a bit of attention. You can see there's still a bit of resin caked on around. Actually, even is there? Or is that just the decal? There's a tiny bit of resin, but this is mostly clean as well, really. Just need to get that bit in there, which we'll get to in a sec. So now let's check on what's going on in here. Right, so we've got our trusty tweezers, and we're just going to try and... Can't even find the thing. Is it turned upside down? I'm feeling what's the morphology. There we go, I've got it. So we've still got some caked on bits there. So we may need to actually repeat this process again with fresh water and fresh ISO. And we'll use that fresh ISO to finish off cleaning the downstem as well. So again, this can take 2 goes. Just part and parcel, While I'm boiling up some fresh water to go in here, might as well rinse the salt out of here. So let's just... There we go, that should be nice and clean. So there's no salt on there, there's no brown, there's no nothing, just clean glass and cheesy decals. We love it. Right, now to avoid using too much ISO and things, you've got to think economically. So let's think economically here. Let's take a spoon of salt, which is going to abrade the tar and resin and shit off here. Put that in there. Maybe I'll get an extra bit of salt, because salt's not exactly expensive, is it? And it's pretty abundant. So, salt is in there. We're happy with that. I've just realised it's not salt, is it? The salt's supposed to go in there with the ISO, and I've jumped the gun. Doesn't matter. Okay, let's try it. I've never tried this before, the salt and water technique. Let's see how that does. So, boiling water, the salt that I was meant to put on the next stage when we had the ISO is now in there. So I put the lid on that bad boy, and I can't do it while I'm filming, but yeah, then we'll give it a shake. I think the salt actually might be a good idea. I mean, most of it's just dissolved, but like you can see, just giving this a little shake, and actually a lot of this shit is coming off just in the water. So definitely, like, don't discount this step. Boiling water first, then the alcohol. People tell you don't wash it in water, it doesn't wash off. No, the oils don't dissolve, but everything else, it melts, it softens, and things slaw off the glass. So you're just softening it right up for when you do bring in the ISO. But I mean, this is like 90. It was literally the whole thing was black before we started. So, you know, we had a pretty firm starting point. Right, so now we're going to transfer. We're going to take it out of the boiling water. Glass is nice and hot. Everything's nice and soft. We're going to put it in here. Right? And this is what I meant to do last time, but I forgot we were only on the water stage. So that's in there. We're going to take a teaspoon. We're going to give it some salt. Don't really feel bad wasting salt, to be honest. It's just salt. I'll buy the cheap bags of salt. Just keep filling up this jar anyway. Alright, the economical step, because ISO is this part that's not so cheap. I might need to refill this bottle, actually. Because we've still got shit in this down stem, I'm going to put the down stem in, and I'm going to use it. And I can't do this unless... Hang on, let's see if I can do it like this. Yeah, you can see that, right? Okay, cool. So, if we move this, I'm using this as like a straw to do the ISO. So it's going to wash through the down stem. And in it's going to go. And there's not quite enough of there, is there? So I'm just going to put that there. There we go. Right, back to normal service. I'll refill this. So we're using this as like a straw. And I have a cut on my finger and that burns like hell. Well, if you're not an idiot like me, probably wear gloves when you're handling this shit. But I'm an idiot, so I'm not going to wear gloves. Right, now we go back to this. Ah! Don't do that. Make sure it doesn't fall over. But if it does fall over, make sure you let out a big girly scream like a real man. Right. Yeah, give it. There you go. Yeah, sorry, I'll stop being weird. So it's hard to see because it's still murky as hell, but I reckon that's probably... I'm going to be really annoyed if this isn't clean, and I'm not going to put that finger in it because look at that, that's going to be a bastard. So I'm going to put this finger in, no more tweezers, that's just... you see, it's still got a bit of... Banshod, okay. Fuck, motherfucker, we're going to have to keep at it. Just going to have to keep at it. Don't take it too hard so you break the glass, because, you know, it is glass. Let's try and do a little... Ooh. You know it's working to an extent, because otherwise this shit wouldn't be like a fucking brown colour, you know, it'd be clear. Give it a little side swirl, see if that does anything. Right, let's try it again. Oh, God damn it, it's just that bit. Let's give it a quick rinse. I mean, I don't want to be a quitter, but there's a tiny little bit of blackness in there, but I don't think I care. If I really cared, I'd get a brush involved, but I hate getting brushes involved because they flick shit everywhere. Although at this stage, because there's so little resin, I actually don't think it's too much of an issue to use a brush. So I will break my usual rule, and maybe there's a new rule now. Sorry, no Bill Maher bullshit, but new rules. If there's only a tiny bit of resin left, then you can use a brush, but don't use a brush at the beginning, otherwise resin is just going to go everywhere. It's horrible. Another top tip. If you're ever going to clean resin with a brush, you need your designated resin brushes. Do not use a non-designated resin brush for resin brushing. These are sticky, they're nasty, they're horrible, and that's how I like them. Right, so I'm gonna dip. I'm gonna dip in there, and then I'm gonna get involved. Let's see if that'll... That's too small, this brush. Let's use a bigger one. Let's use this one. Give it a dip. And get it involved. And if it won't come off, even when you brush it, then it's just not coming off. Right, so that was fine. There was no flickage. There was no flickage. We're all good. Give it one last go. Swirl them round. And how are we looking? Pristine! Pristine Aguilera, mate. You ain't no hollaback guy. I know that's the other one. Shut up. Right, so where were we? Down stem. So, to be honest, I know I said don't use a brush, but because we're at a stage where 99% of the resin is clear, I'm going to brush the down stem. Just for the love of Christ, when this thing is caked in resin, don't put a brush down it, because when that happens, and the brush bristles come out, they will go and they'll all over your clothes. If you're wearing white clothes, you're fucked. If you've got white walls, you're fucked. That shit don't come off. That's why you haven't used fucking isopropyl. But at the end, you can use a brush, which I only just kind of thought of now, to be honest. But look at that, there you go. It's got decals on it, so it's kind of hard to see. But that is pristine. Dirty. That is one of hers. Right. So, where does that leave us? It leaves us with way too much shit all over my table. So I'm having to film in this little region. But look at that. Fucking clean as a whistle. Beautiful. And that's one of many ways you can clean a bong. The top, you don't have to do exactly how I do it. The top tips are, soften it up with boiling water first. Don't use brushes unless it's at the very end stages, or you'll flick fucking tarry black weed resin everywhere. If you're going to use a brush, have a designated resin brush that you do not use for anything else, because it will get fucking gnarly. And you just end up having to clean the brushes, so you just have a cascade of jobs that you've created. Your solution will become another problem. And yeah, you can use acetone, you can use 99 ISO, use salt, add salt as an abrading agent. And yeah, you want to do this relatively regularly. You know, the longer you leave this shit to build up, the harder it is to get it off. I would say do it about once a week if you're a regular bong user, or if you're like me and you have no self-discipline, do it like, you know, when you can be asked.